The Marinade.
There's no O in marinade. Let's try it one more time. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
The Marinade.
Marinade.
Bone marinade. The
That's
Marinade.
The Marinade. With Jason Earle.
The street lights have dimmed, and it smells like rain. The tequila I drank eases the pain. It erases the sound of your tears as they fell to the floor.
Welcome to The Marinade with Jason Earle, a free-flowing conversation about the creative process with creative people. This is episode 76, and my guest is Jim Keller. Jim has lived a wild creative life. He co-wrote the song 8675309, you know the one, as a member of Tommy Tutone in the 80s, and then went on to manage the composer Phillip Glass's career and publishing company, a role he remains in to this day, all the while putting together his own impressive solo career, including his most recent record, which comes out in February. It's called By No Means. It's produced by Mitchell Froom. That is important for a few reasons. One is, y'all, my suspect Wi-Fi connection was not cooperating when I recorded this wonderful conversation with Jim, and so the first few minutes of our talk are lost forever, I guess, except in my brain. So he kind of we're right in the middle as we begin the conversation. We'd been talking for about 5 minutes, and Jim is discussing By No Means and the influence of producer Mitchell Froom on the collection of songs and on Jim making this record in the first place. And the only other thing that I think you missed that is important to the conversation is that Jim's sitting in a room. We're on a Zoom call, and it's just sort of like a workspace that he's in, kind of his office. And we referenced that space a couple of times during the conversation because we were kind of just talking about having a place to be creative. So other than that, I don't think you missed much, and this conversation was such a delight. I'm so honored to bring you my conversation with Jim Keller.
I don't want to spend another night here on my own.
Of course. Of course, we start off talking about the technology. We get the technology.
Oh God.
I don't know. I don't know what happened. But we're back. Let me make sure I'm recording again. Okay. So the last thing that I heard you say was you froze at intimacy. Perfect place to freeze, I guess.
Okay. I don't know where I was starting, but did I talk about, basically I sent Mitchell some tracks, and did we talk about that?
Yeah, you said you sent him some tracks, and he was and he liked them, and he knew there was something to him, and he liked the intimacy of you with an acoustic guitar.
Yeah, he honed straight in on that, and so we spent some time. I went out a couple of different trips and kind of just worked through all the material to find the right arrangements and the right tempos, the right keys for everything, and then we put together a session with players that kind of listen in that way and can not drive the song but facilitate the song. And great players with great ears can do that. And so and then we cut it live. So but the whole thing is based on my thumb of the rhythmic structure of my playing, as rudimentary as it is, and my voice, and then building all the stuff very subtly around it. And, you know, it was really fun to make because there's very little on it. You know, there's not much going on. It doesn't ask for more, but, you know, it's not a big band. You know, there's not a bunch of solos, there's not a bunch of parts. We cut it basically live. Almost everything is live, and the vocals are pretty much live. You know, we do a take, and if we said, okay, that's the one, then I'd go back and re-sing a couple right over it just so we could pull words and that kind of thing. But it was that kind of the joy of finding the simplicity in it. And that was always the goal for both of us, to do that.
Well, and one of the things that there's a simplicity indeed, but there's also like an emotional complexity to the songs. And when I listen, like there's even these moments, and there was this kind of cool moment for me. I say kind of cool. It was heavy, really, where I've been listening to this record for a couple of weeks, and this morning I got up and gave it another run through and just really sat with my coffee and spent some time with it. And last night I had this weird dream, man, and I don't know if I'll cut this out or not, but I had this weird dream about a woman from my past, right? And like a relationship. And there wasn't anything like terribly bad about that relationship. But it was weird and complicated, you know? And so I listened to Mistakes, and there's something about that song that just hit me in a different way. Because I think you could give it one listen and you could feel like, it's just kind of a straightforward song about just, you know, failed relationships or something. But the emotional space I was in this morning led to something a little bit deeper and heavier for me. And I was thinking about this person, and connecting it to those lyrics and to that song. And I wonder, when you're writing, you know, and you're sitting in that space that you're sitting in now, and you have your guitar, how much of that insight are you aware of, and how much of that emotional connection are you aware of? Or is it more that you are just whatever comes up, comes up?
Well, if I'm fortunate, and the Mistakes is a very good example of, you know, on one hand, you could just say a guy rattling off the names of girls that he, you know, split up with or something. But that isn't what the song is about, you know, for me personally. You know, to me, it's about mistakes, and it's about regret. And, you know, so for me to be able to be successful with that song is to be able to take that element that I'm feeling with it, and to have that somehow get through that song, so that when it comes out to somebody else, that is there, even though I'm not spelling it out. It's not just about mistakes I've made with relationships. It's about, you know, a big, broader, deeper, you know, litany of stuff that I regret. And, you know, that's one of the joys of songwriting and the joys of singing, is that, you know, you find your own story as a singer. And, you know, the goal is, you know, for good singers, is to be able to project that. It's not about the words specifically. It, of course, is in there and it's buried in there. But what somebody is getting across is not something that's in the lyric. It's something that's, you know, driving those lyrics and beneath, and the roots and underneath those words. You know, the great singers, that's what they're able to do, is they're able to destroy you with something that someone else could sing and it would sound silly.
Right.
You know,
or even someone else's song, you know, sometimes.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, which is always amazing to me, when someone can take someone else's song and make it feel completely different based on the way they sing it or play it.
Yeah.
That's some of the magic stuff. So on a granular level, what does your writing process look like? Can you kind of walk through how the song comes together, at least the iPhone part, the rough demo part?
Well, I mean, literally, I walk into this room and I pick up the guitar and I start playing. And I mean, the first thing you do, as I always say, is you have to show up. You got to go to that room. Otherwise, you're guaranteed nothing will happen.
Right.
And then, you know, I hit something and I'll play some chords, and it's basically seeing if there's a couple of things. One is an emotional connection. to something you're playing, and then you kind of take off from there and just see where it leads, and kind of give into it. And sometimes you get a hook. Sometimes there's a lyric hook that you try to work with, and it's kind of a jigsaw puzzle. But for the most part, it's picking up the guitar and just playing some chords and seeing where, what kind of connection that has.
Is there a lot of editing then in that process? Because I mean, again, there's so much in these songs, and I love how you broke down mistakes like that, because there is so much in these songs, and lyrically they are rich. There are some, and I love how like you're able to take kind of simple phrases and pack a lot into those somewhat simple phrases, but there is a lot emotionally there. So are you like moving things around a lot, or?
Well, it depends. Sometimes, yes. And I work a lot with a guy named Byron Isaacs. I don't know if you know Byron. He played with Levon Helm for years, and now he's in the Lumineers. And he lives around the corner, and he and I have been working together for 15 years. And a lot of what happens is that I'll work on something, and then Byron will come over, and I'll play what I'm doing. And then he and I will tweak with like trying to find little changes. And, that's one of the things that's amazing about songs is that somebody could come in and change one word or one little phrase, and it takes something from being like just forget about it to something that actually works. And I mean, don't get me going, because it's I worship at the altar of song, and when the difference.
That's what we're doing here, Jim. I want to get you going.
Well, the difference.
No, that's exactly what we do on the show. Is get however you want to go, and especially in terms of like breaking down songs. I mean, the creative process in general is what this is about, and I certainly want to hear more about the other parts of your life as well, because you've lived an incredible musical and creative life. But I really am impressed with this collection of songs, and the way it came out. And I love the choices that you made in terms of, that you did keep it kind of spare, that you, that again, there's for me, when I listen, there's so much emotion that comes through, and I'm able to connect with that in a big way.
Yeah. I think, also there's different ways of connecting. And I mean, I always use the difference between like John Prine and Bruce Springsteen, both of whom are incredible songwriters. John Prine never tells you how to feel. He sings the song, and it can be devastating, and he's just singing his song. Bruce tells you how to feel.
Wow. Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, it's like, and there are different, so it's,
and there's so much value in either one of those.
Yeah, that's right. But they're really dramatically different to me.
Wow.
And I think that, for me, I actually, even though I gravitate more naturally to the Springsteen side, whether I like it or not, I like the John Prine side more. And so some of the things, if I can accomplish that, where I'm not telling somebody how to feel, but it's getting through, then that makes me really happy when something like that can happen.
Oh, that's what this record is definitely full of. And I think that's so interesting. And maybe this will get us kind of down the road of like your musical life, because I think it's interesting that you start off with this, big pop hit and in this major pop band. And then it's like, and then you go on and you get in kind of the business side of things. And now you're making this record that is more of a, I'm not going to show you how to feel or tell you how to feel. I'm going to kind of show you the way, and, whatever you do with it, you do with it. So like, I kind of want to ask you about lessons you've learned about the creative process throughout the years and having all those experiences. Are there lessons that maybe you've learned that you kind of wish you would have had as a young songwriter that you've learned over time?
It's so tough, because in the beginning, we were writing pop songs, and I still love pop songs, and I still write pop songs, but that was, it was in my 20s, and it was a unit. It was me and Tommy Heath, and then we had a band, and we would rehearse every day and work out parts, and so it was so different. It's also, that was however many years ago. It was a long time ago.
Yeah.
I mean, how can you have regrets? I'm really happy that I can do what I do now. I'm really happy that I can write songs that I'm proud of. And, that's not easy to do. That is really hard to do. But I could never have gotten across what I'm doing now 20 years ago, let alone 30 years ago or 40 years ago. I mean, not even close. And I think that, I'm in my mid 60s, and, I always say there's, happiness or, things working don't have a bye-bye date, or, in other words, when things work, doesn't matter when that happens, when things work, whether there's, if joy is happening, man, take it wherever that moment is. And, so would I have loved to have been able to have done this 25 years ago? Yeah, I would have, but I really like it right now.
Right.
So, I feel very fortunate. I mean, I'm not, that's kind of shifting over into a different kind of topic, but,
Well, yeah, I mean, it's part of the same conversation though, because I'm so interested in how you make those decisions, and I'm interested in those decision points throughout your life. Like you come off this big pop band and the success as a pop band, and then you go into the kind of the business side of things, managing Phillip Glass and working. Did you run, or maybe you still do, his publishing company?
Yeah, I manage Phillip and run his publishing company, and then I have another company also that manages other people.
But that's a different. I mean, I know it's part of the same world, but it's not, right? It's a different. No. It's a very different thing. It occupies a different brain space, and so
totally, yeah.
How do you?
Schizophrenic.
Yeah, well, that's what I. So there's two questions then, and one is like how did you come about making the decision to go down that route, and then the second question, which I can circle back on, is like how you balance those two brain spaces.
Well, the first question is, I was in a pop band that lived the shelf life of a pop band, which is, like this. We went up. We were very fortunate. We had a single on the first record, and we toured a lot, and then we had a hit, that song that ended up still being popular, and then we crashed and burned, and then nobody sees, except other musicians, the 7 to 10 years that happened after that, when I didn't have 2 dimes to rub together, and I was still playing and trying to get records deals on my own, and it wasn't happening. And it wasn't happening for good reason, because I didn't really have, what you needed to have to make it work at that time. And then it was an act of desperation, trying to find a job, because, I wasn't making a living. And, the jingle world was really huge in New York at that point. And I hated it, and I couldn't relate to it at all. And I couldn't didn't do scoring work. I was a bad guitar player who wrote songs, So I just kind of fell on this situation where I heard that he was looking for someone to run his little publishing company at that point. And I bullshitted my way into an interview. And, I was like 10 years or more older than everybody else that was applying for the job. They're all like lawyers. And I went and I just said, look, I'll work for nothing. And if it doesn't work, you don't lose anything. And if it works, then you can start paying me. And Phillip came up on the street. So he loved that. And I didn't know anything about his music. And I didn't pretend I knew anything about his music. And, I was kind of a little more sophisticated than some of the other people trying to get the gig. And he liked it. So we started working together. And I didn't start out as his manager. I had to, but that was 25 years ago. So over the course of these years, became his manager and, running and becoming his partner, basically.
Did you have any kind of background in that? Or did you just kind of figure it out?
Oh, man. I didn't know anything. Opera? you know, I'll sit in a meeting, whatever.
Yeah, but
I
I
still,
think like the business part of it too, though, I guess, is the other thing that I find so interesting. Like so often songwriters aren't exactly like the ones I know, at least. And I'm not shitting on anybody's business acumen. There are a few who are great at balancing the two, but those are just different, those are different ways of thinking, and they're sometimes at odds with one another, because you have to make certain decisions that creatively, you may want to take this risk or go down this route, but the business side of running things may not allow for that. And so
yeah,
that's kind of that second part of the question that I was curious about, especially as you were coming off of being, hustling to play your music and then it not working out. And then now you're going into the business side of things, like how you kind of operate those or balance those, because you're still balancing those things.
yeah. Well, I didn't balance them in the beginning. I quit
Mm,
playing for 10 years. I didn't play guitar for 10 years.
wow.
Because at that point, the playing music was hurting me. I
Mm,
wasn't being able to move in my life. I was, kind of trapped in this place that was not healthy,
interesting.
and there's drugs and blah, 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 all the other stuff. But,
Uh-huh.
uh, so, I went full on trying to figure out how to learn and how to do this because I was desperate. And fortunately, I found this good situation to work and to learn in. But really, the tools that I had have been the tools that I've had my whole life, and those were that I know how to get along with people, and I know how to make things work, just
Uh,
with human beings. And so with Philip, ultimately, really, most of what I did with him was to allow good things to happen, and to create an environment and relationships with people that allowed Philip to get what he wanted, and projects to happen. And, so a lot of the tools that, I already had.
mm,
That's why the band Tommy Tutone was successful. A lot of it was because I knew how to, put it together.
mm,
Um, and those are, life tools that I was good at. And the business side, I struggled with, and I had to get people to help and lawyers and whatever. But um, and the challenge, which remains now, even though I'm kind of sliding out of the work side,
mm,
um, but it's hard because you wear that skin. You are what you eat,
mhm,
and for the music, for me, it's like I had to come into this room first thing in the morning before the phone rang, before I looked at email, because I have to give myself that space before the suit, you get that little jolt of the business thing. And I had to make room for it. You have to be smart with your time. I had studios, and I would go there and shut the door and bring my buddies in to play. And it was like, you have to carve out that time. Um, and it is a challenge. I was much funnier before I got a job. I'll tell you that much. I was a lot more fun to hang out with. Um, so I gotta get back to that because I'm on my third or fourth act. So I think I'm gonna circle back to that one again.
Oh, I love that. I love so much about that answer. I think so. It sounds like you have to kind of actually physically compartmentalize
Totally.
those two worlds.
Yeah, and it's a challenge.
Yeah.
I remember one things that I learned from Philip is that, you know, I've heard him say this. He says, well, why are you successful? Blah, blah, blah. He says, well, you know what? You get up every morning and you just work hard
Mm,
and at whatever that is. And, for me, music, even though I stopped, and that's a whole other story about starting again, is that, aside from my family, music is the most important thing in my life.
mm,
And writing and playing and being a part of the community, this an unbelievably supportive, amazing group of players and songwriters that are in this floating around the various towns we live in, and that is the most important thing to me. The business and work is a way to afford myself, the opportunity to do that in a way, and support myself.
right. There's a couple of things that came up there that I wanted to ask you about, because what I hear in the answer that you just gave about how you compartmentalize those things, there, or how you, let me rephrase that. what I heard in the part about how you ended up managing Phillip is that there was a certain amount of like intuition that you were able to follow.
Yeah, right.
And one of the things that it's in my notes here, one of the things that I wrote down about this record is that there, by no means your forthcoming record, is that there felt like there was there's an intuitive feel to it. There's a lot of intuition in there. And I wonder if that's something you were conscious of when you were writing the record, or if that's something that's kind of been how you've lived life, just in general.
Well, I think that what makes this record successful for me personally, whether or not anyone in the world likes it or not,
Mm-hmm.
is that with Mitchell's, brilliant assistance, there are very few moments on there that don't ring true to me.
Mm.
And, if you can, I don't care what it is, if you can, say what you feel and mean it, man, that's a gift,
Mm-hmm.
And it's really in music, and in I think any art form or anything else, it's really hard to do that. It sounds so incredibly easy and simple, and when you hear it done, it sounds like nothing. And now I'm going to go off into the songwriting thing, because to me, there are songs that will make me that I'll collapse on the floor when I hear them,
Mm-hmm.
and they could be 3 fucking chords.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And you're going, how did that happen?
Mm-hmm.
How does that person do that with 3 chords and a couple of verses?
Mm-hmm.
And and I'm always astonished and thrilled when I get that hit from something. Mm-hmm. And well, as they say, 3 chords and the truth.
Mm-hmm.
But I think for me, what I like about this record is that there are very few moments that don't ring true to me. And Mitchell and I spent a lot of time weeding through stuff and throwing stuff out. There's third verses all over the floor on Mitchell's studio. And it makes it fun, because when you can do that, and especially when things are simple, that's I mean, I love complex songs too, don't get me wrong.
Sure.
But I think the core of where I come from is the folk, soul blues thing, where it's that simplicity, that if you can accomplish that, it's just insane when someone pulls that off. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And so many things come up every time you open your mouth. This has been so interesting. The editing part, are you a decent editor yourself? Does the business side of you kick in those moments?
There's no business side connection at all
all.
The song. No, that's like, shut the door, go away. Don't come near me. There's no. Yeah.
So do you need somebody else to help you edit, or are you able to?
I like having people.
That's cool.
And my relationship with Byron Isaacs, who is a brilliant songwriter, he has really been as much an editor with me as a co-writer. I have no compunction whatsoever about bringing other people in. I don't have to have just my name on a song. I don't care. If Byron walks in and sits down on the couch and changes one word, that's a co-write, because like I was saying before, it's like, to me, you can change one word and it has huge impact, or one little melody. And so I use Byron a lot for that editing process. I don't know if that, like, a perfect example is "Don't Get Me Started." You know that song? Mm-hmm. It's on there. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I wrote that on a whim, and we didn't cut that live. I cut that during the pandemic, and I sent it that was an iPhone recording of me singing right here. I sent it to Mitchell. He blew the track up, and that's what's on the record. And then David did a solo. But I just played it for Byron, and I said, "Oh, here's this thing. I'm going to throw it out." And he goes, "No, man, it's really cool. It's really cool." And I would have thrown it out because it was too simple,
Uh-huh.
And but he kind of comes in and kind of steers me, into down a road. So that's
great.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. That creative collaboration.
It's fun. It's also really fun to work with somebody.
Yeah,
I don't like spending all the time by myself, you know.
right. The, you made me think about when you mentioned "Don't Get Me Started." You made me think about kind of some of the themes that come up for me, and I wonder if they're conscious themes for you as well on the record. And the specific thing that came up to me the more I listened to the record was traveling and also coming home, or like traveling and hoping for someone else to come back home or something else to
Mm.
come back home. That's what kept coming back to me, and I wonder if that's something that you intended or that you were aware of.
Uh, I don't know. I don't know where to go with that. I mean, you know, the thing is, the traveling thing is a lot of that for me is looking back
Mm,
at my youth.
mhm,
You know, there's a romanticism with that. I don't get to do nearly as much of that as I used to do. I've
mm,
got a daughter, I've got a family,
mm,
and you know, to me, you know, music, traveling, the freedom from all those things, it's not something that ever leaves who I am.
mm,
And you know, hopefully I'll be, you know, in my mid to late 80s, you know, somewhere, and I know I'll be thinking about, you know, some beach in Baja with a beer. You know what I
mm,
mean? So that never leaves. Um, you know, it's like I was almost a physicality with that. And in terms of the coming home part, I'm not sure where that button was for you, but to me, then that comes back to, if I'm misinterpreting this, I probably am, but to me, it always comes back to the interpersonal. You know, it's all about, you know, my relationship with, you know, whoever, whatever the
right.
thing is. You know, my relationship to guilt, my relationship with my family, whoever it is, some situation. And, you know, I write, it's so funny. My daughter, you know, she'll hear me writing a song and she'll be in another room and she, as a joke, she goes, "Daddy, is that about me? Is that one about me?" You know, and plenty of them are, but for the most part, you know, when I'm writing, and I know that's true with most writers, it's like I'm using emotional relationships in a story that may have absolutely nothing to do with the specifics of that emotional relationship, but I take the emotional, you know, fabric and I use it in the song, you know, and I
Mm,
use the song as a way of expressing those things
mm,
that may not have anything to do with the specific lyric
mm.
of the tune.
Oh, that's great. Man, this has been such a pleasure. We usually end on what you're getting down on. You've mentioned a few songs, you mentioned a few artists that really move you.
Yeah.
What about like at this moment? It could be TV, it could be a book or a song, or what's got you fired up right now?
It's going to sound really pretentious, but there's this new writer that somebody turned me on to who writes essays called Ula Biss. And I'm
Okay.
only saying this in case there's like 3 listeners that know who that is. Um, it kind of blew me away because she's a female and she's younger. And, you know, it kind of at this stage of my life, it's like I'm really curious about how other people are thinking. And, you know, I know how my generation thinks. I've been living with them my whole life. And so for me, it's fascinating because it really is different. And I know it may not seem that way, but it really is very different, you know, for me, you know, reading authors that are uh, from a totally different context. So that's who I'm reading. I'm on our 3rd book in a row with that.
Oh, that's great. Okay.
Yeah.
And I recognize the name, but
That's
I've
not
never.
fair. I got to come up with something.
Yeah, no, but like not that I know anything about her.
I didn't know anything
The
about her.
name.
Yeah.
I'll have to look her up. I'll have to get into her because I think I love how you said that, and it's something that I struggle with a little bit. I don't struggle with. It's something I'm aware of that I tend to consume. I just turned 40 last month,
It's a
and
big one, man.
yeah, it's huge, man. It's huge.
Yeah.
It's huge, and I wonder if like, and there's a couple other things that have happened in my life in the last month that have contributed to what I'm about to say, but it has really it's chilled me out more than I thought it would. Like something about, I have a great deal of anxiety about my mortality. And so I thought 40, I'd freak the fuck out.
Mhm.
And I didn't. I just sort of was like, oh, I'm 40 now. And then there's some other things that happened in my life that have like helped to ground me.
Mhm.
But I feel at peace in a way that I haven't in forever. I don't know if that was similar for you, but like, but the point I was making in saying all of that is that like, I gravitate toward artists who are from kind of the same region as me, who have had similar lives. I connect to Jason Isbell's records in a way that I don't with some other people, because not because our lives were the same, but there's just so much about what he's experienced and what he said and how he grew up that resonates with me. And that's true of a lot of writers too. You know, I've been reading a lot of like Appalachian writers, and all my people are from Kentucky, and so I'm interested in the idea of like, it's not that I don't branch out. It's just that I kind of come back to my comfort zone a lot. I'm not only consuming that art, but it is kind of like my blankie, you know?
Yeah.
So
Well, you're saying that, I'm trying to think of what my blankie is, but I don't know if I.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I mean, well, what you're talking, really what I was thinking about was that, you know, what I always go to are the songwriters. You know, there was that Bee Gees documentary that just came out. You know, look, man, we all laughed at the Bee Gees, but give me a fucking break. Those songs, some of those early tunes are ridiculous. And it's so brilliant. And, you know, whatever it is, it doesn't matter whether it is them, Chris Christopherson. You know, a little while ago, I heard Danny O'Keefe has a song called Good Time Charlie's Got the Blues. Do you know that song?
Sounds familiar.
Whatever. You know, it's just one of those things where it's like 3 chords and you're just going, how did that happen? How do these people do this? You know, Dolly Parton has been out a lot with the documentaries and stuff. And it's like, you know, go away, man. It's like, you know, man, if I get anywhere near that, I am really happy. You know?
Yeah. Well, do you measure yourself, or are you able to just go like,
well,
I love this?
I don't start by measuring myself. I start by pleasing myself. And, you know, if there's anything that I've gotten better at, it's that, because I care much less. But, you know, it has to please me right here. And if it pleases me right here, that is, I remember when somebody once came to one of my gigs and they go, it was an old friend, and she came up, she goes, Jim, that was so great. What are you going to do? And I'm like, that was it. I just did it. You know what I mean? It was like, you know, what are you going to do? Are you going to go on the road? No, you just watched it. That was it, you know? So as a songwriter, to be able to get that sitting right here is, man, that is a gift. If you can have that in your life, to be able to, you know, touch that stuff and have that in the room with me. And so it starts with that, you know, then later you go, is the song any good or whatever, blah, blah, blah. But it always starts out with, does this make me happy? You know, what is this doing to me? Or is this hit me in some emotional way?
Well, your new record hits me in an emotional way and makes me
happy.
I
appreciate it.
And I'm so grateful for your time too. This makes me happy.
Yeah,
so thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, likewise. Yeah. All right, man. Take care.
Cheers. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye. Jim Keller, y'all. Thank you so much, Jim. Thank all of you for listening. This episode was a blast to make despite our technical problems. Give Jim's record a spin. It's called By No Means. It's wonderful. Revisit 867-5309 by Tommy Tutone, by the way. It's one of the songs that's ubiquitous, but give it another listen. There's a reason why everyone knows it. It's a good song. Give the Marinade a follow on Twitter and Instagram, marinadepodcast.com for all things the Marinade. Tell a friend about the show. Rate us and subscribe on your podcast app. Those are all free ways you can support us. If you really like what we're doing, please consider joining that Patreon. Seriously, y'all, it's so much fun. I'm having a blast over there. It's another creative outlet for me, and I'm trying to think of ways to continue to make it something that people want to be a part of. And right now, it's a small group of folks, but we are having a blast. So if you can swing it, we greatly appreciate it. All those free ways, though, are huge ways to help the show, and I'm just super, super grateful for everybody who listens. All right, y'all, it's time for what I'm getting down on, the segment of the show where I talk about the art that is inspiring me at the moment. I've been listening to a few things. The thing that I've had on rotation, the record I've had on rotation lately I'm recording this on Super Bowl Sunday. So Aaron Lee Tasjan's record, Tasjan, came out on Friday, last Friday, February 5th. It's gorgeous. I mean, I got to get Aaron on the show. We're like 1 degree of separation away from each other, and I feel like I've been saying this for years that I need to get him on the show. So I need to just step up and do it. He's just such a bright light. Everybody, I don't know him personally, but everybody who talks about Aaron says that he's just a delight, just a sweet, sweet person, and an incredible musician. If you don't know Aaron's music, go through his old records, go through his catalog. He was also the guitar player for Driving and Crying. Just for a little while, just a fantastic musician, and this record showcases everything that I love about Aaron. So that's the thing that I've just been totally obsessed with lately, and I highly recommend it. I've also been listening to a lot of the Colonel. I think it's our next episode is going to be with the Colonel. Y'all, he's just... I've been in the mood for country music. Just, I don't know if it's turning 40 and being nostalgic. I don't know if it's just the rhythms of the world or whatever, but I've been really heavy into a country sound, and the Colonel provides sort of this fresh take on a classic country sound that I have so much love and respect for. And we had a wonderful conversation. Like, I'm really stoked for y'all to hear it. So many good things happening with the show. The Colonel's coming up. We also have our conversation with Will Johnson coming up. And I just had a blast with Corey Ryan Forrester, the comedian Corey Ryan Forrester, the Buttercream Dream, the Cho. If you're a well-read comedy fan, you know him already. If you're not, you're about to get to know one of the funniest dudes out there, and just a thoughtful, sweet guy. We really hit it off and had so much fun. I'm so stoked for y'all to hear this conversation. So many good things happening, and I'm so grateful for all of you who listen to the Marinade, all of you who support the Marinade in different ways. Tell people about the show, spread the word, interact on Twitter, interact on Instagram. All that stuff makes a big difference, and I appreciate you. Your time is valuable, and you choose to spend some of it with us, and that means a lot to me. Y'all, until next time, if you can swing it, go out and create something. If not, don't beat yourself up. Cheers, y'all.